feel like we've all heard a million times that perfection is the enemy of success or the enemy of progress. But I feel like another slice of that is originality. Chasing originality and chasing perfection, I feel like they come under the same thing in terms of holding you back. At the start, anyway, I wish when I was starting, I had this feeling of like everything I did had to be groundbreaking and never done before. And then as you start to learn more and see more, just like simple techniques, like when I first discovered like infrared photography, I thought like, oh, I was ahead of the curve, and I'm going to introduce this to music videos, and I'll be respected for, doing infrared music videos. Like, no one really cares. And then, eventually Hollywood will do it, like Dune, they shot on infrared, and then everyone starts doing it. This sort of like feeling of, I have to, my next project has to be original. No one really cares if it's original. People will care that it's not original. It's funny, people will care that your work's not original, but they won't really care if it is original. So, really, no one cares. No one cares about your work. No one really cares. And that's a good thing. I know there's this painter I follow, and something he said was, try to make a bad painting. If you are struggling to make something, try and make a bad thing. And I feel like that's something that when I get that paralysis, when I start looking around at like what needs to be done, and I start thinking, I could do this, or maybe if I had more expensive this or more expensive that, I think just try and make something bad, or just, make something. And I definitely feel, especially when it's come to my editing process for photography, a lot of people ask me sort of how I learned how to color grade. I started trying to make really bad color grades. I just messed up every slider, pushed the S-curve to the max, so everything started like half inverting, and you get these disgusting looking images. And you made something bad, but you made something interesting, something new, something you don't really understand. And then you start bringing it back, bring it back a bit. And that's sort of how I learned how to color grade. I made something bad, I made something ugly, and that taught me what everything does in its extremes, and then I brought it back to a more sort of like palatable thing. Like I'll look at this painting and I'll think, it's not as good as the last painting. It doesn't look, the lovely brushwork I had on the last one, it's not quite there yet here. And sometimes it'll stop me wanting to start. And then I'll sit down, I'll have that thought in my head, I'll go, right, just try and do a bad job. And I'll start slapping the paint on, and then all of a sudden it's like, that looks better. And just because I'm slapping it on and doing it, it's getting better. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I like this. And you may have started thinking, make the bad thing, make it in a bad way, just do a bad job. But getting you there, that's the important bit. I often say this with like going to the gym as well. I know everyone's going to be saying, January time to go to the gym. I feel like I take the same approach to work as I do going to the gym, which is whenever I go to the gym, I don't want to go to the gym. But if I can make it to the gym and all of a sudden I'm there and everyone else is there and they've got their headphones on and they're working out, all of a sudden I want to work out because you're there, you've turned up, you're in the zone. You drag yourself through the warm up and you might be like, you know what, now I'm ready to go. Same with work. You just start, and then the momentum keeps you going. Also, definitely a lot of pressure through social media for everything you put out to be perfect. I feel like people sort of waking up now and seeing that putting out the perfect life and blah, 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 it's got to the point where A, it's really cringe, and B, anyone watching it doesn't believe it. And people are really liking just more honest stuff online. I saw a video literally just now, this morning, it's currently 6 a.m. I saw this video someone posted, and they were like, they stopped treating their audience like they had short attention spans and started treating them like adults. And they saw people start actually watching their content. When you stop treating someone like, go watch my content, it becomes off-putting sometimes. If you're just trying to put off this perfect world, or you're trying to just like play to the opinions of others. There's so many opinions on there online, you can get overwhelmed. There's some great information out there, and there's a lot of great podcasts, a lot of people sharing their insights, but there's a lot of crap. And just, if you're in that mindset of like taking advice, even taking my advice, I don't know everything. I get people disagreeing with me all the time. And sometimes they're right, and I change my mind. But, I posted the content. Not everything you see online is correct. You've got to make up your own mind, and the experimenting will get you there. I didn't go to school for photography, so everything was sort of self-taught. And when I learnt the most was when I was copying people. When I first started doing photography, I was doing it just for myself, just for fun. I was working in video. I had this mindset with my video work was like, everything's got to be like original. I've got to like build on top of the best stuff. I've got to do like, what's trending, but in my own way. And it needs to be like original and like no one's ever seen it before. And that's basically an impossible task. You can't always do that for every video project. And it like really held me back in doing stuff. Whereas the photography work I was doing, because it was just for me and for my friends, we would just see something really cool and be like, oh, that's really cool. Let's just copy that. Let's just do that. And in doing that, I learned how those things are done. I learned how they're not done. I managed to experiment and find all these new techniques because there was no pressure on, oh, it has to be my thing, my style, my original. Before starting, I would look at, work. I would look at, say, Harris Newcomb, for example, as a photographer, and I'd be like, how the fuck do you get the skin to look like that? What the hell? And then, you just have no idea how to do that kind of stuff until you start experimenting and understanding. And a lot of the time, you overcomplicate stuff. I remember I was trying to recreate this picture of Jim Morrison, really famous picture. And I was messing around in the studio with my dad, and we had all these lights we were playing around with, like in all these places, blah, 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 like 3 different light setups, and then just stripped it back until there was just one light there. And it's like, oh, it's just one light kind of at the front, like, pointing at him, like, wow. So you can overcomplicate stuff in your head, definitely. Definitely there's a lot of hard stuff out there, but you can definitely overcomplicate stuff. When you start playing around, you realize sometimes how easy it is to do the things that you thought were very difficult. But this is what I was talking about with the art school stuff. I had someone come into my school from like an American art school. They were like trying to pitch us to go to the uni there. And there's a lesson they do at this school, it's SCAD art school. There's a class they take there, and it's just about mixing colors. So you'll get your palette, they'll give you the primary colors, and you have to practice, like say there's like a swatch of this shade of yellow. They'll give you that shade of yellow and be like, right, you need to make that yellow perfectly so it matches up perfectly with that. And they'll do that for hours and hours and hours every day, copying that hours and hours and hours until, they'll look at the primary colors and they can mix whatever color they want because they're so good at mixing the colors. And at its core, that is just deconstructing. That is deconstructing someone else's work. They do this in music universities as well. They'll take out famous songs and you have to sort of rebuild them one by one, like stem by stem, until you know and understand what's gone into that final product. And copying other people's work at the beginning isn't something to be ashamed of. And it's a very quick learning process if you start copying people's work. And even at the top level, even at like commercial shoots and stuff, they're still copying. I mean, it's called referencing. I mean, every music video, there's loads of like social media accounts comparing like music videos to the original film. There's referencing and copying. There's this little gray area between like stealing someone's idea, paying homage to someone's idea. So definitely don't be afraid to copy at the beginning and then come out of it and start putting your own spin on it. And if you really do want to copy something, just, pay homage. Don't try and pass it off as your own thing. I feel like 3 things that get confused a lot of the time are aesthetic, a style, and like a project/era. Like say there used to be painters and they'd go through an era of doing a certain type, a certain look of painting. That would be like a little era for them. But it still might come under their style, overarching their style. And then like in the modern day, you look at creatives and their Instagram has an aesthetic. And I feel like an aesthetic and a style can get confused, and it can put a bit of pressure on people starting sometimes because they might look at their work and they'd be like, oh, it's all a bit over the place and I don't really know what my style is yet. I don't have an aesthetic. It's like, you're just starting, you just need to get something out there, get moving. Like people would find their style very late in their career. People tend to. If you're finding an aesthetic really early on, they can be quite boring. Your tastes are always going to change. You're always going to want to make something new and different. There might be people you look at who, they're very popular for that one thing they did, very early on in their career, and then they changed and did something else. There's a great documentary, it's called The Price of Everything. Definitely go and watch that. but there's a painter in there who was very successful early on in his career, and all the critics in the art world were telling him, do more of this, you'll be, you'll be rich, you'll be famous if you just keep doing more of this, people want this, they'll buy this. And he's like, I don't want to do this. And he moved on and got left behind by the art world. But he was happy doing what he wanted to do. He was doing the work he wanted to do because he left that style behind. So don't be afraid to move forward. You can, all right, here's another one for doing original stuff. As you play around and start trying to deconstruct stuff, you'll come across things that are new to you. And coming across those new things yourself, personally, I find that very interesting. Like things that aren't actually new. You're not reinventing the wheel. But say the first time you discover long exposure photography, it's like, whoa, this crazy thing. And it's really exciting. It's just like, wow, this thing, who knew? And sometimes it can be more exciting to discover it yourself, playing around, than it can be for someone to tell you how to do it. Like being sat down and being like, do this, this. It's like, okay, cool. And you might take it a bit for granted. Whereas when you discover it through sort of play and experimentation, that kind of like, whoa, what just happened? What was that? That sort of excitement in the moment can, I find that quite motivating to do more of that thing. Because when I was starting out using Lightroom and all these sort of like photo editing apps, using presets was actually really useful because, and this isn't me trying to sell you presets, I don't sell presets yet, but when I applied other people's presets to my image and all the sliders would just automatically move, that was like having a recipe all of a sudden. I would look at my image, I would look to the side of the sliders and see where everything's moved, and I could then understand what those sliders did. Because when you're first starting out, it's very confusing what all of those different things do. Some of them, you move them, it's like, kind of looks like it's doing the same thing that other one does. But when you see them all put in that final recipe, you can understand how to get those results. It's another sort of deconstructing thing. So I don't think I should be afraid of like using people's LUTs and see that as copying or anything. I feel like it can be used as like a learning tool. And obviously, when you use other people's LUTs, you should use it as like a building block, and then you sort of take it apart and do your thing and, play around and fine tune it the way you want. LUTs, by the way, if you're wondering what a LUT is, it's a look-up table. So it's for, it looks up the recipe and applies it. That's what LUT stands for. If you want any more boring facts like that, subscribe. I used to stress a lot about the technical aspects and my technique being original and it coming under my style and all that sort of thing. I think when it comes to putting across a narrative, which I think is the key for any good sort of creative work, is the story. Everyone's story is unique. Your story is different to everyone else's in your family and your friend group. And at the end of the day, communicating a story is at the core of all of these projects. If you're selling something, if you're doing a commercial job, you're selling a lifestyle, you're selling a story. If you're making movies, you're selling a story. And one thing that sort of surprised me, well, not surprised me, but something I had to change my mind about, was I always wanted to do art and painting stuff. But working in the creative industry, you hear a lot of like different opinions about, people just selling bullshit and selling all the bullshit, and these like creative directors who they're not very technically skilled, but they just sort of like hire people who are technically skilled and they just sort of spew all their bullshit. And it kind of got me early on like quite against some creatives in my head, because I was like, they're not technically proficient. Who cares like what they have to say? They don't have the technical ability to back up what they're saying. But I like had a really sort of I don't want to say life-changing, had a very opinion-altering evening, which was, I was very lucky to be invited to like an opening evening of the Versace gallery. And when I go to a gallery normally, I do like to look at the art, I like to look at the brushstrokes, I like to, have a look at the blurb and see what's going on. But it was the first time I'd got to go to a gallery exhibit where all of the artists were there. And I got to go around and chat to all the artists. And that really changed my idea of what it's about, because I got to sit there and have conversations with all these people, and they'd give me all of this backstory of what everything was, all of their influences, and I realized that the people buying the art, so the opening night was the night where people buy the stuff. the people they're selling to, they're not necessarily selling, you know, the colorful picture or whatever it is. They're selling the story of how it was made. I think if just say, I don't know, you're on holiday and, you know, you walk past a little pottery store and someone's there like, oh yeah, I make these, blah, 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 have a nice chat with them. You're probably going to buy one of their pots and you'll use that pot and you'll think of that time and it will remind you of that moment and that holiday and that story. And that's in essence what those paintings are. It's the story. Can't remember where I was going with this, but yeah, don't stress too much about your technique because it's at the end of the day, it's about your story and your human experience. And that also comes back to what I was saying in another video, which is just, it's about the human experiences you're having on the day on set or, you know, in the studio. It's about the people you're meeting along the way. At the end of the day, we are social people and we need to be social. And that's what makes it fun. What's something I created that I'm proud of that wasn't original? Okay, this photo. This photo took reference from this photo, originally taken by this person. I saw that image, I thought it was incredible. We had to shoot this really big dress and I thought, what's a way that we could do this where there's movement to the image and we can really sort of show off how long this tail is. So we took reference from that. Because I was in that headspace then of doing those composite shots, I then took this photo, which I actually prefer more. And I don't think we would have taken that picture if we weren't taking inspiration from the original photo. So there's an example of taking reference, but then creating something new out of not being original. One last thing, for anyone who's worried that them taking inspiration, copying other people's work is like, you know, someone's gonna turn around one day and be like, you copied this, blah, 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 you deserve to burn in hell. Someone might do that, but there are so many people out there right now copying. Where's the picture? Where's the magazine? I get asked to take a picture of someone in this style every single day. Every mood board I've ever had as a photographer has had this image on it. And everyone in the world is, photography-wise, is basically copying this kind of style. This is the in look. Still, this was taken 2022, March 2022. It's almost been 3 years and people are still ripping this style off. And there are loads of people who are very successful, making lots of money copying that style of image. And some of them aren't based in the UK. I see there's a lot of big photographers in Russia actually who, you know, I've seen some just rip off like the whole shoot concept. Like they've copied Jack's shoots, like shot for shot, prop for prop, styling and everything. And they're just, you know, they're doing a good job making lots of money out there. I'm not saying it's good or bad or right or wrong, but I think knowing that, like knowing that people do that, helps me sometimes when I look at, you know, copying, like say the photo I showed earlier where it's like, it's quite, you know, it's pretty close to a pretty similar thing happening there. I'm copying that. And it helps me get over that and be like there's people out there who are actually ripping people off shot for shot and selling their like artistic ideas for money. So if you feel like you're maybe a bit too close to the mark, just do it. Don't let having to be like so original and have your style and have it all figured out like hold you back from just making something. Because yeah, there's gonna be people who judge you always, but don't let it stop you from, you know, getting on set and having a good time and making something. And a lot of these things, you know, as photographers especially, we can be held back. It's like, oh, I don't want to copy this, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, we're just technicians with cameras who are being hired by people who want that final product. We're being paid to do that. And if someone's asked you to copy something, you know, if you don't feel comfortable with it, maybe sort of say, oh, can we just, you know, change this up a little bit so it's not directly copying the other person, but, you know, don't let it stop you from doing it altogether and in your own work. Yeah,